Good Work Show. Good show for you today. We have got, we're going to have a full house in a minute.
Yeah.
Yes. We are going to have two guests on. Tiffany Tolbert, who is the executive director of Everybody Wins Atlanta, and then John Gibson, who is their board chair. So they're going to join us after the break to talk about Everybody Wins Atlanta. It's an organization that we've had on the show a while back. I don't know, over 3 years ago. And
Pre-me.
Yes. Yeah. Pre Trinice, but helping with childhood literacy. And so it should be pretty cool. We're going to hear what they've been doing since then and then update everybody who is listening today about the organization, because there's a really unique way that professionals can get involved in childhood literacy and helping our youth read and read well and continue to read. So,
Yeah. It's really cool. I think it's always fun when, used to be like the idea of, if you weren't in trouble, but your parents showed up for something good at school.
Mm-hmm.
My parents worked in the school, so it really wasn't that exciting to me. But for other people, if your parents or somebody came just for you, for whatever reason. So it's kind of that.
Yeah.
But different.
But not your parents.
But not your parents.
Yes.
Other people.
Yeah. But you get an opportunity, though, as a professional, too, to do something that if you don't have kids in school, or if you do, you might go to another school, or you may not have an opportunity to go into a school. So, yeah, as part of my work on the chamber board in DeKalb, I went to a couple of schools. I guess it was last year. We went to some high schools and did a tour. And that was since my daughter had been in high school, that was the first time I'd been to a high school. But to do a tour of a high school and to see what they had and go and look at the robotics program and it was kind of cool, because the school looked way bigger than when I went to school. I was like, even the ones that weren't the ones that were super funded really well or whatever, but they were all very good schools. But I was like, why is this school so big? I don't remember. I don't remember my high school being that big. And we had upstairs, but it just felt like that school was so huge. I didn't.
My school wasn't big. We've talked about this. My school wasn't big enough. So we had.
Oh, yeah. You didn't have a locker. That's right.
I didn't have a locker.
But I feel like when we had this conversation, you could have had a locker. You just chose not to use. Oh,
there were no lockers.
Oh, that's right.
We didn't have lockers.
That's right.
Or they might have been there, but they weren't for use.
It's just decoration.
They were just decoration to make it look like high school. Feel like you're in school. We had, set dressing, I guess. I don't know. But we had portables. So, like, a lot of my class, yeah, they were, like, out.
That seems like the worst place. What if a hurricane blew through?
Well, you wouldn't be there.
I mean, but what if it just automatically it just came?
You mean like did a hurricane? What?
Did you live in South Florida? Hurricanes come from Florida.
Exactly, but they don't just appear. Like,
what if it did?
You'd probably die. I mean,
I'm just saying.
Now a tornado did happen.
Tornadoes spawn out of the blue.
Yeah, tornadoes pop up, and if we had
can a hurricane come out of the blue?
No.
Are you sure?
Absolutely.
We should have a meteorologist.
I mean, I kind of am.
I don't think so. Do you have an AMS seal? No.
No. But I know enough about meteorology to tell you that no, a hurricane just can't.
How long does it take for a hurricane to
They can form quickly, but never in the sense that if I'm sitting here and it's like,
how fast does it move? How is the fastest hurricane?
I don't know. That's a good question. They can not move at all.
But so what if they didn't see it coming? Like, so what if somebody was
But a hurricane moves like 30 miles per hour. Like a fast moving storm is like 25, 30 miles per hour.
That's kind of fast though.
Not if they're hundreds of miles away.
But what if somebody didn't see it?
Like nobody in the world?
Apparently.
Nobody in the whole world.
None of the models showed it. It wasn't on the thing. Technology has a glitch.
Here's the thing. Okay. So you're just creating.
I want to know, like, can it?
I don't know.
I'm telling you, nature has a way.
But I think that what that would be something else. It wouldn't be so like.
What's in between a hurricane and a tornado?
Well, they're two different kinds of weather systems.
But
so a lot of stuff.
Like, apparently I don't know any of this. So what do you
like a thunderstorm?
No, I'm talking about like what's on the like thunderstorm is less. Right?
Well, like a severe thunderstorm could have straight line winds that could do as much damage as a Category 1 hurricane or a low level tornado.
I know, but what's in the middle though? Like a
severe thunderstorm.
But you're not gonna like run out in the basement for the severe.
You would if you were.
I probably wouldn't.
If you were
the tornado things are on, like, but when you then I'm going.
But you don't hear like the severe thunderstorm warnings. They'll say but the warning actually will say if you're outdoors or if you're
inside
or if you're in a like a trailer, like that you would need to find other shelter. So yes, the straight line winds with the severe storm.
There's something that you can make with in the middle.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm very confused.
Okay, so a hurricane feels like a big to-do.
A hurricane's a big... So are tornadoes. Like
well, but that doesn't seem big enough.
Okay, so you're saying hurricanes are over here.
Yes.
Like a big... Like a Category 5 hurricane. Yes. But like an EF5 tornado would be on that same side. There isn't...
Okay, well...
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I don't understand what you're getting at, because those would be two of the same things.
I don't know.
Impact-wise, it'd be the same. One's just smaller.
I guess so. So, but like, and there's something in the middle. Like, you go from the real big thing to the like small, like contained thing, but it makes a lot of damage. But what's
it would
in the
be
middle?
like I think what you're thinking about is that. So if you have an EF5 tornado, which is like big and terrible, then you would have an EF1 tornado that's just smaller. Right. So I think that's what you're. I'm not exactly sure where we're.
Well, I need to talk to a meteorologist.
You may not. I don't think you want to expose.
I know some meteorologists. I'm gonna ask the question.
But
I feel like it's in my
I don't understand what you're trying to say. What's in the middle of what?
Like there might be like the big storm and then the small like.
Okay, we're gonna draw this out.
No.
If hurricanes are I just want to understand if hurricane is over here.
So say you have a bazooka and then you have well, that's probably not a good one. So anyway, never mind.
Say you have LeBron James.
The example I'm going to use.
Go. So say we have LeBron James over here. So we're saying we have LeBron over here, and then over here we've got you. So your basketball ability.
We have gone off the deep end. On today's show, we have to give me my pin back.
I thought it was mine.
No. Tiffany Tolbert and John Gibson from Everybody Wins Atlanta. And then after that, we're going to have Paula Momfeld, who is from CASA of Forsyth County.
Yes.
And CASA, there's a lot of CASAs around Atlanta. And I think we might have had like one organization that worked with CASA not too long ago on the show. But court-appointed special advocates, volunteers who are doing really great, but they are volunteering for some of the most vulnerable youth that we have in our area. And so she's going to come on and talk about the work that CASA is doing in Forsyth County, how many people they need and they are serving, but then why there's such a need for CASAs. And so anyway, so it'll be good to talk to her. She comes on the show after we talk to Everybody Wins, but it'll be good to check in with Tiffany and John to see how the organization has grown since they've been on the show.
Yeah, so two great organizations that are serving kids that they are asking adults in our community to go out and help a kid.
Yeah. And it's easy.
Kind of sum that up. Go help a kid.
Yeah. Well, all right. But there's a lot of ways to do that. And
yes, there are. And they're doing really important work.
Yes.
And one of the things that we'll definitely ask Tiffany and John about are why is it so important that because they work with young kids, elementary school kids,
fifth grade,
and why is it so incredibly important to catch kids at that age to get them excited about reading? Like we've talked about before, my parents are educators. My mom was a reading teacher. Reading was not optional in our home, but it also fostered a lifelong love of reading. So, if you don't have that, how can that impact your life, and what Everybody Wins, Everybody Wins, is doing that really does help to start that little seed that'll serve kids well throughout their lives.
Yeah. So it'll be good.
Somebody should have gotten Elaine a book about weather when you were in the second grade.
Because it doesn't really matter.
Weather doesn't matter?
That part doesn't matter as long as I know what to do. But I was just trying to get I don't need to know about I don't need to know that deep. I just want to know for like my own purposes. I don't need to know the technical stuff. I just need to know. That's why I need to talk to a meteorologist who could.
So you just need to know
regular people terms, not like. I don't want to know about the straight line winds.
Okay, but I guess my thing is like, so you just want to know, when do you need to do something?
Oh no, I got Glenn Burns for that.
Okay, so what do you want to know? I'm just trying to figure out, what is the question?
I wanted to know if there is a storm in between those two. Like, you have a van and you have a bike.
Right.
In the middle of that, you might have
like a car,
like a Nissan.
But what you're saying is like, but
like,
what
you know what I mean? Like,
but I guess my thing is that you're trying to. They're equitable.
Why is this bothering you? It's
because
not bothering me. Like,
it's really bothering me now.
I'm over it.
Because they both have their own scale, so you can't say that there's necessarily something in between the two, because both of them have their own. That's like saying, okay, what's in the middle of a Harley and a Nissan, a Nissan, but
a tricycle,
right? But but motorcycles have their own.
Right, a trike is in the middle of that, though. It might be closer to the motorcycle side, but it's in the middle. You got 2 tires, you got 3 tires, you got 4 tires. There's something in the middle.
I'm exhausted by this conversation, so
I'm
just very
I dropped
excited
it a long time ago.
I know,
when I
but
switched
now
gears, you went back to it.
I did, because now I was
done.
Troubled.
You got a watch, you got a grandfather clock, and you got a clock on your desk. But it's in the middle. I'm just telling you, there's something in the middle.
I'm so troubled by this conversation. So we're going to take a break so I can regroup. And we're going to come back with Tiffany and John. Everybody wins after the break.
You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We have a full house today.
We do.
So we have Everybody Wins Atlanta. And
everybody
wins. Yeah, and everybody is here. That's right. But we have Executive Director Tiffany Tolbert, who's with us. And she's been on the show before. So she's a friend of The Good Work Show. But it has been a while. Yes. I was looking back and it's been like 3 years since you've been on the show.
I don't think I was here when.
I don't think you were. I don't think you were. Yeah. So this is way back when it was me and Jim. So
yes, it was.
Yes. But welcome back to the show. And then we have Board Chair John Gibson, who is here with us. And thank you. Yeah, welcome to the show.
I appreciate you all having us.
Absolutely. So, so we know a little bit about Everybody Wins Atlanta, but why don't you tell our audience about what the organization is all about and your mission?
We are a 20-year agency that works to improve children's literacy. And we do it in a unique way by pairing students with volunteers during lunchtime to improve their reading. We discover that kids respond well to that one-on-one contact. Being able to lean into an adult, have an adult who shows up for them consistently is important for their reading as well. So we work with students in 10 public schools right now throughout Metro Atlanta to improve their literacy.
That's awesome.
That's great.
And lunchtime, too. That's
I know.
Convenient for the volunteer, convenient for the students. We're in the schools, easy peasy.
So you're in this, so the volunteer, and we'll get to all this, but the volunteers go to the school.
Yes. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Normally it's one near their offices, or if they're retired, near their home. So easily kind of like power lunch hour.
Okay.
In and out within an hour to the school, read, and back to your desk or your home within 60 minutes.
Cool. So, John, tell us a little bit about why you're involved. So we we have the executive directors of organizations here, and, and like us who work at a nonprofit, we get paid.
Right.
But then we have our board members that show up, and they're just doing this out of, how important the organization is to them. So tell us a little bit about what made you get involved.
Yeah, well, and first of all, I should say that Tiffany is paid. The work that she does and the work that all of our staff does is really just tremendous. And our staff works, we like to say that we're lean and mean. We really have a tight-knit group of people that work really, really hard to facilitate the mentor interaction with our students, to make the time at the schools as easy as possible for both the administration and for our volunteers. So Tiffany and all of our staff are just really fantastic. But I've been reading with Everybody Wins since 2011. I have always just enjoyed the educational space. I understand that we as a community are always going to have issues But one of the things that we can do to stem some of those problems is work with students at a young age. That is when I think our influence can be the greatest. And certainly in the Metro Atlanta area, there's a lot of Title I schools where there is a need because of the income at those schools to really work with them on a one-on-one basis. I always say that my wife and I, we are very blessed in that we've got great careers and we're able to come home, have dinner with our kids, and read to them every evening. And I now see my son, who's in first grade, I come home and he's reading a book. We're lucky. Not everybody has that opportunity. Some folks are working 2 and 3 different careers. You've got single income and single parent households where there just really is a need and a desire to help students. And so what I see is for Everybody Wins is to be another piece of the puzzle. We've got great and fantastic teachers and administrations working at the schools that we're in, but they're serving 25, 30 students during a day. And so what we can do is through 30 minutes once a week, getting with students. I actually read at Hope Hill Elementary School, which is right by my office in Midtown. I've been doing that for 9 years. We had our first reading session of the day yesterday. And so I climbed up into the bunk bed with my student who's eating his lunch, and we sat in the back of the beanbag chairs and read for 30 minutes. We also talked about our day. He actually asked me about the vacation that I talked to him about last semester. And so, just that continued interaction, he's not going to otherwise meet a intellectual property lawyer during his day. But for 30 minutes over the past 3 years, we've talked about our lives, about what our families are doing, what's important to him, what's going on in his school day, and we've used the reading as the conduit through all that. And so it really is just important to have those students come together, see us, and know that they've got another person in their life that's really caring for them and wants them to succeed.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah. And John, you mentioned something, and maybe this is a question for the both of you, but if students aren't reading, there's so many challenges. So I know we talked about this some years ago, but what are some of those challenges that if kids aren't reading at a certain grade level, if they're not on their grade level, there's a trajectory and there's statistics that are really dire if you don't read. So tell us a little bit about what that means, because people might think, well, I don't have kids, or it's not going to affect me, but it's bigger than that. It affects everybody.
Definitely. So right now in the state of Georgia, 34% of third graders are reading at grade level. It's already low. And then if you consider those who are in low-income areas, it's 24% who are reading at grade level. And what that means is if you ask a student, I'll give an example when I do our recruitment meetings, is ask you, where's the restroom? And you say, down the hall to the right. And I ask a student, where's the restroom? He or she will say, down the hall to the right. If I give you a written question and say, what direction is the restroom? They pause. Direction. You mean north, south, east, west? What do you mean by direction? That's where that gap happens. And for those students who, between the ages of 0 and 8, who have not learned how to read, at 8 and beyond, you're reading to learn. So if I can't figure out the words in a sentence, can't understand comprehend what's going on, I can't write it comprehensively in a sentence, and then by 4th, 5th grade, I can't read it well either, I'm not going to finish high school. And unfortunately, of those 2/3 who are reading below grade level, the 2/3 will end up in jail or on welfare. What are their options? I can't be gainfully employed. I can't seek a job.
And we've also just recently partnered with the SunTrust Foundation, who gave us a fantastic grant. And one of the things we told them was that financial literacy is another form of literacy. And if we have students in our schools that continue to grow up that can't read the forms that they're signing, that is a impediment to them making good decisions financially. And so it really is it impacts everything that we do in life. And how we go about life and how successful we can or might be.
And we had Literacy Action on not too long ago, talking in their work that they're doing in this space with adult literacy, and in some of the ways that folks who realize that they've gotten to the adulthood, not being able to really be able to read in the way that they kind of self-correct to get through their day.
Coping mechanisms.
Think you want to do that again because
coping mechanisms.
I can't get the word out. But how, we hear about that third grade reading level. That third grade is just so important, and just, how that can just change the complete trajectory of I can say that.
Yeah. And there was another organization that's talking about the communities plan how many jails and prisons they're going to build based off third grade reading levels.
They do.
That's just
but you can't
sobering
get a job.
statistics.
And if I can't get a job and I'm 17 and I need money, I'm going to go to crime or welfare house while I make money.
Right.
And they recognize that, unfortunately, for many, the environments where they see the crime and perpetuate the areas that they're in.
Yeah. And that's what's great about our organization is reading with students in the elementary school from 1st to 5th grade. We really see the progression. And just obviously some of that is just them growing. But I've been with my student now since the 3rd grade. And seeing the difference in his interaction with me, the ability for him to pay attention and read and comprehend words, he's now more confident saying, I don't understand that particular word. That is unfamiliar to me. He would not have done that a year ago. He would have just assumed that, or just gone through the motions, assumed that he knew that. Now he's saying, that particular word I don't know. Can you explain it to me? And so it really is, you see the progression and the growth that our students are making. And it's really it's the best part of my week. And the reason why I continue to read as a board member is because I really enjoy my job, but that 30 minutes once a week is where I get that great just one-on-one relationship, and it's just a fantastic break, and really know that I'm making an impact within the community that I live in.
Fantastic, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of the nuts and bolts on how that works with the volunteer, because you've been with your student. Is that the norm? Is that how it works, that you get a student and you stay with that student? So how does that work?
Certainly that is the hope. If you get paired with a student who's a 1st grader, assuming that they are going to stay in the community and don't move, and everybody is enjoying that relationship, then that is something that we encourage, and most mentors and students want to continue to read with the same mentor. Certainly we have students that move in and out of the system, so things change. I had a student for 2 years, and then he moved away, and obviously things change. But again, it's the progression that we see, and not only the one-on-one mentorship that we have during that one school year, but again, from the spring semester to the fall semester. How was your summer? What did you do? Oh, you mentioned that you were going to be doing this. It's those that kind of 5, 6, 7 minutes at the beginning of the reading session where you again get to connect with the student, and you get to rehash what's going on in their life, and that's when we make the connection, and then you continue going on in the reading session.
Cool. So we have about a minute left before we take a break, and we're going to come back and dig a little bit more in, make sure we give our audience opportunities to find out how they can get involved and read on their lunch breaks, and then what else the organization has going on. But Tiffany, before we do that, let's go ahead and give your website address and how people can find out more about Everybody Wins Atlanta.
Absolutely. It's www.everybodywinsatlanta.org. It's Everybody Wins Atlanta. Our Facebook is Everybody Wins Atlanta as well. Our Twitter is Everybody Wins GA is our Twitter, and Instagram as well. Everybody Wins Atlanta is our Twitter as well.
Okay, cool. Fantastic. So like I said, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back, talk with more with you and John, and then we'll get you to share another success story too, because we've heard about John's students and the conversations that they have, but I bet you can share some stories about some others who have gone through the program. So we'll do that when we come back. You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to The Good Work Show. We have been chatting about Everybody Wins Atlanta. Here with the Executive Director, Tiffany Tolbert, and Board Chair, John Gibson, learning about the organization, helping youth literacy, so ages 1st grade to 5th grade, yes, is that right? Yes. Here in Atlanta, and giving opportunities for people like John and business folks like all of us to go and support our youth in our community with their literacy and helping them read, which is super important. And we talked about the importance of of having early literacy, versus being illiterate or low literate as an adult and the effects that can have on your life. So lots of great work here. So tell us about the books, though. So how does that happen? So John, do you pick the book? Does your student pick the book? Do you combo together? Like, tell us about the books that you're reading and where do they come from?
I will say that I usually do not pick the books. We've read Diary of a Wimpy Kid. That's a popular one, that series right now. And we're currently reading Goosebumps, Dragon Blood, or one of those.
So you're saying you would not have picked that.
Those would not have been my first choice. But that's really the amazing thing is that it doesn't matter what they're reading. They're reading and they're enjoying it, and it's capturing their attention. And just, yesterday I was reading to my student, and we were reading the Goosebumps series, and he was talking about what he would have done in that particular situation, and how he would have forced the grandmother to come look and see the dragon blood in the tub, and so I would not have picked that myself, but he really enjoys it, and so that's what's really key. As far as where we get the books, we obviously will collect donations from folks for used books. They're in good shape. We do ask, though, that those books be kind of the current generation that they like. This is not the chance just to unload the books from the 1950s that nobody wants anymore, but certainly we read Charlotte's Web last year, and that was a classic. It was fantastic. And then we also go out and purchase books through the donations of generous donors, and then we also have relationships with book vendors who will also provide us books at reduced prices.
Right.
Great.
Yeah.
So then, do the kids get to keep the books, or do you have like a lending library, or how does that work?
So I can let Tiffany chime in here as well, but we have each school has a cart that the students choose from. When they choose a particular book, we read it for the day. We then set that book aside, so that is that student's book until we finish it, or until they choose to read another one. We also have various programs throughout the year in which we will actually provide books to the students to keep. Most of our students, not surprisingly, do not have the library that we might have at home of books that they would read with their parents. And so, again, through the generous donations of folks and volunteers, we will have numerous opportunities during the school year to provide them books that they like. And then through our corporate reading days, we'll also provide books to students. That's a little bit different program than our Power Lunch series. And Tiffany, do you want to speak to that?
Sure, exactly. Our Corporate Reading Day program, we started 2 or 3 years ago for teams of volunteers to come out from a company. So you may say, I can't commit every week to come out. I love the support. I can't commit every week to come out. You can volunteer once a month at a school to read with students one-on-one or in small groups. Every student in our program gets a brand new book as well. So kind of a team outing, team voting for companies to read to kids in school as well.
Oh, because we're kind of like a book club.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
We should do that.
We should do that. We'll do that.
Okay. Yeah.
We said
nearby as well, right?
Yes.
School nearby.
On the radio, on camera.
Yes.
We're going to do it.
We're writing it down.
I'm a lawyer, too, so now the contract has been...
Make it legal.
Well, I'm not signing it yet.
But what's the importance, though, is because, so John just mentioned that, not surprisingly, and you're working with Title I schools intentionally, but that, these kids don't have the books at home. And so tell us about the importance of them being able to have that book at home, because they're reading with a volunteer who's great. That's somebody who, like John, who you mentioned, which I thought was great, that probably not ever maybe would that student be able to meet with an intellectual property lawyer. I mean, how often, so not only are they learning about you, but they're learning about a career path potentially too. But then being able to take what they are doing and practicing at school during the school hour and take that home, speak to that a little bit.
It's important for us to share reading among the family. And we realize that the students having a book at home, they would go home, it's homework and or TV time and in their bedtime. And what our students have done is we've heard stories where we'll give out a book 3 times a year, and here's a book for you. And if someone will say, I go for my sister as well, and take one home for her. And of course, we have spare. We will say books in the home, you can take 2 or 3.
Yeah.
But definitely having a chance to have that book to go home to share with their siblings. Our reach may be our one student. We're going to reach 4 or 5 more kids through their siblings as well. And the kids are proud of that. I have a book to go home. Now, this is my book to go home. And we had one student who we gave our books 1 year, and he stopped and said, is this for me? And of course, your heart drops, because of course it's for you and take home and to read with your mom and your dad and siblings. But they love getting books. And as they pick their book out, and we give them the books each year, so it's different books to the student. They're like, I want more, I want more. So to hear that is phenomenal for us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And you starting that early on too,
Yes.
because the love of reading will continue. So
We have a new book I just got in the mail yesterday. Someone, a small company created a book of photos for Atlanta United soccer team last year when they won the championship.
Oh, cool.
This year, kids will get a book with photos and words, but about the soccer team, so it's more relevant that they're interested in. And
fantastic.
so we get donations all the time like that. We'll say, here's a great series of books we have. We'll get this to your students as well. So we're happy about having them learn more about soccer and sharing that story of the championship we won last year.
Nice.
Nice.
Yes.
I
Very
need
cool.
to read that book because I don't know anything about soccer. So
It's a good time. The playoffs are about to start.
I didn't either, so it's
is
okay.
it? I feel like soccer's. I'm sorry, it's off. I just feel like soccer season never ends.
It's basketball season.
I'm a soccer player myself. So
Does it never end? I'm like,
that's true.
I don't get it. So
I'll get you a
anyway,
copy.
okay, thank you, because
Yes.
I'll read that when we do the thing. So
there
we
we
go.
go. Our book club.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes.
Reading the book. Does it have enough words though? Is it too picturey?
Maybe.
Okay, we'll bring something else too.
Yeah.
Right.
So talk to us a little bit about, and we've heard your story, John, about another story maybe of a student that you guys have paired with, and kind of what have you seen from these students as they get to have these relationships, and maybe a story about a student, and maybe another story about another volunteer, because in a couple minutes we're going to start asking for volunteers. So let's actually, just how working together has impacted them.
There's one that we share. A student, a first grader, came in very, very shy. His partner was the VP at a large bank here in Atlanta, and so he's intimidated coming in. He's first grade, 3.5 feet tall, and this tall gentleman comes in, and he wouldn't really speak to the gentleman. He was speaking, say hello, but he wouldn't really talk anymore. And every day the gentleman would ask him, "The best thing that happened to you today?" And he would say recess or lunch, thing, first graders. And so 5 months in the program, same question to ask every single day. One day he forgot to ask that question. And the little boy said, and mind you, wasn't me talking to him. "You'd ask me a question today." Like, "What question?" "The best thing that happened to me today." "Oh, I'm sorry." So I asked him a question. And the little boy said, "You came to read to me."
Oh,
You never know what you'll have for that student when you show up for him consistently, because he understands that you keep your word. You show up when you show up, and you come here for me. It's one-on-one positive attention. How many kids really get that? If you're in school, you're sharing your attention from your teacher or from your parent. But you're one-on-one with an adult in a treehouse, like John and his students climbing 4 feet high off the ground in the treehouse, reading just to me. And it's positive, and it feels good because now I feel special, and I'm learning something as well. So the volunteers get something out of it as well. They feel good, but the kids do as well, because it's that attention that's saying you are important, and I want to hear what you have to say. Let's learn and read together as well.
and I think it's important you said the one-on-one positive attention, because I think kids get singled out for negative attention all the time.
Yes.
So
That is true.
being, you're doing something good.
And adults see the schools differently as well. Some volunteers are single and don't have children yet. And I had one volunteer who, before she married, said, "I never knew schools were like this. I never knew what a school lunch was like anymore." She's, far removed from first, second grade. But it's the school and the troubles they're dealing with, and they're managing, and the ins and outs. And she's like, I'm an advocate for school now. I want them to do better. I want more resources for teachers to come in. So they see the school differently as well as an adult.
And I think that's a great point, Tiffany. Obviously, our first priority is the students. But through that, we're reaching a cadre of volunteers that are walking into schools that they might not otherwise ever attend or see the inside of. And they get to see the inner workings of some of our lowest poverty schools. And my son goes to Springdale Park Elementary, which is APS school, and I read at Hope Hill Elementary. They are a mile away, but they are light years away in terms of resources. And so me going in there makes you recognize that the difference I need to make at Hope Hill, and they're fantastic teachers and fantastic administrators there. And they're working so hard to make it and help it succeed, just like the ones at Springdale Park. They just need that little extra help. Yeah. And so that's what we see ourselves as, and the volunteers that walk into those schools is that extra help to provide the administrators, teachers, and students the abilities and tools that they need to cross that threshold.
Fantastic. So we've got about a minute and a half left. Tell us how people get involved. So we want to read and we want to start our own book club, right, with the students in reading. So obviously you're working with kids, you're working in schools, definitely liability, and I know you guys have all of that covered. So tell us all about how do we get involved, and what makes the volunteer great for this.
Anyone who cares about improving children's reading and give 30 minutes a day is an ideal volunteer. Someone who says, I want to give 30 minutes of my time and lunch hour to leave the office. And when you go back, imagine having a rough morning, deadlines, phones ringing, etc. I leave the office and walk into a public school. And I see kids eating lunch, kids running around, and sit with a child and just watch him or her and literally come and hug you when you walk in. Mm-hmm. You're here to see me, I'm hugging. And you go back to your desk thinking, I made a difference today. I can finish my day a little better. Someone who wants to make a difference in their community is our ideal volunteer for us. Mm-hmm. Go to our website and sign up. Our schools now, we're in 5 school districts. We're in APS, of course. We're in Fulton County schools. We're in Cobb schools, Gwinnett, and DeKalb as well. So if you're in throughout the city, if schools are nearby you, definitely sign up and decide to improve on students' reading this school year.
All right. And give us the website address one more time.
It's everybodywinsatlanta.org.
And just briefly, obviously time is always important to people. If folks travel a lot, as I do, we oftentimes have 2 mentors work together as a team with students, and they'll switch off every week. Again, the idea is that we've got a continuous stream of volunteers meeting with a particular student. And so that is another way that if people don't feel like they can give their entire time or be there every week, they pair up with a mentor. That works great as well.
All right, cool. Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for coming on the show today. Make sure you check out Everybody Wins Atlanta online, social media. Sign up to be a volunteer and read to the youth.
Donate books. Book drives are great as well. So anything's great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're listening to The Good Work Show.
To learn more about the show and how your company can tell their story, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter @GoodWorkShow.
Audience, welcome back to the Good Work Show. We are sitting here with our good friend Paula Momfelt, who is the Executive Director of CASA of Forsyth County. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So I think we know a little bit about CASA, but we want to make sure that our audience knows about CASA. And if it's immediately to me, I'm like, oh, it's Spanish for house, but...
That's very common. We hear that a lot.
I don't know why that just popped in my head, but I do know what CASA, the organization, is. But I want you to
That's what that word means.
I know.
So
that's
it's not a stretch that's what you...
I know. I wasn't saying that. I'm just saying that's not what about the organization.
Hi, Paula, can you tell us about your mission?
Absolutely.
I don't even know why you chimed in. I had this. Me and Paula were here.
CASA is my very favorite thing to talk about. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocates, and we train volunteers to be advocates for children who are in foster care. They're abused and neglected. We're a national organization, and there are 46 CASA programs in the state of Georgia.
Oh, wow.
We're one of them.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is a lot. They're organized around judicial circuits.
Okay.
Most every county has a CASA presence in it. There's only about 9 counties that don't.
Okay.
Oh, wow. So tell us a little bit about why CASA is necessary. So what's the benefit to, you could imagine, but having an advocate for these kids in the court system?
Sure. So when a child comes into foster care, they become a temporary ward of the state, as it were. And so they work closely with our Child Protective Service, which in Georgia is the Department of Family and Children's Services. There are about 13,000 children in foster care in Georgia right now, which means that it's a very overburdened system. You've got amazing people who work for the Department of Family and Children's Services who have a heart for this work and are amazing at what they do, but simply the numbers are bigger than what they are. So it's great to have a second set of eyes and ears on these children to make sure that their needs are being met while they're temporarily out of their parents' home. So a CASA volunteer's role is to know everything there is about that child, how they're fitting in with their new foster family, what their educational needs are, and are they being met in that situation. In Georgia right now, most communities have very few foster parents. So in Forsyth County, of the 115 children that we're serving, most of them are outside of Forsyth County. We've got children that are placed in Augusta and Macon and LaGrange and McDonough. And so
that's far from Forsyth County.
It's so far from Forsyth County. And so it's really important that while those children are out of Forsyth County and out of the reach of their DFACS case manager, there's somebody paying attention to how they're doing in those environments. They also know what happened in that situation, what caused them to come into foster care, and help monitor how their parents are doing, preparing for their return to the home.
Yeah.
And our goal is always that they will be reunified with their children and their parents, and that's what we work towards very actively.
Is there an age range of the children that you serve?
Yeah.
You say children and immediately you think younger, but there could be teenagers and probably multiples of children.
Yeah, so kids in foster care can be anywhere from 0 to 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
In Forsyth County, our demographics are heavy. Almost half of the children we serve are between the ages of 0 and 5.
Really?
And as you think about it, they're really the most vulnerable population.
Absolutely, yeah.
So what might be a risky situation for somebody that age, for a 13-year-old who can get up and make their own macaroni and cheese, things aren't as risky when they're in a unstable home environment.
Yeah.
So those are typically the ones that would come into foster care first.
Okay. So again, then those volunteers really have to be very specific. I mean, you choose them carefully. Tell us a little bit about how that selection process goes in, because now you're talking about not only children, but a really vulnerable set of children when they're coming to 0 to 5.
Our onboarding process has 3 steps. Somebody submits an application to us. We invite them in to meet with our team and have an interview with us where we go over what their life's experiences have been. They don't have to come to us with any special skill set at all. We take them very raw, and they don't know anything about social work or child welfare or about the juvenile court system, all in which we play. We teach them everything they need to know. So at the end of that interview, we determine if it's a good fit for them and if they're a good fit for us. We anticipate that a volunteer will spend 10 to 12 hours a month doing their CASA volunteer work, talking to all the people that need to be spoken to and visiting their child once a month or their sibling group that they're working with.
So they do, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Sure,
but
sure.
you said, that was a question that I had. So like, if there are children that are a part of a family, they would get one advocate for all of them.
Typically. We do have a couple situations where there's a family of 5 children who are placed in different foster homes. And just to help those volunteers out, we have 2 volunteers working as a team.
Okay.
But typically it's 1 volunteer, even for a sibling group. And so so we bring them into this environment where they become an expert in a world that they know very little about. So they go through 30 hours of training. And during that time, they also spend 10 hours in courtroom observation so they can see our CASAs in action, what that looks like. It is unbelievable to watch those CASA volunteers so raw in what they're doing and become an active, relevant part of that proceeding. They're standing there with trained attorneys who've been doing their work for years and a judge who knows the law and social workers. Everybody turns and looks at that volunteer and says, Mr. Jones, what can you tell us about Johnny's situation and how can we help him and what are your recommendations? And it is not unusual that the whole courtroom turns and really adopts the recommendation that this CASA is suggesting. They follow that child through the course of, it could be 18 to 24 months. We've had CASAs on cases 3 to 4 years. They become the consistency in that case. DFACS case managers change jobs. Attorneys come and go. As they move into new foster homes, it's not unusual that a child in foster care might move foster homes 4 times in a year. But that CASA is consistent, and they know their history from beginning to end. And as things move forward, they're the ones everybody turns to know that history.
Yeah. Wow.
That's incredible. So my next question was going to be what's required of them, but you just kind of went through all that. So you say the time commitment, and I kind of just want to expand on that a little bit on like, what does that mean? So you talk about, I'm just wanting to, folks are out there thinking that they may want to be involved. So talk to us a little bit about what you said, 10 hours a week. So what?
A month.
A month.
10
Oh,
to
okay.
12
So
hours
that's
a month.
different.
Sure.
But what are those 10 hours spent doing?
Sure. So about once every 3 months, they're in court, and that could be 2 or 3 hours, depending on the time and the court hearing itself. But the other thing they're doing is really getting to know that child. Part of that is a visit to see that child monthly. That's part of the requirement. They must see that child monthly and make sure they're doing okay. But in addition, they're going to talk to their teacher. How is Johnny doing in class, and what are his needs? They might be in an IEP meeting or a 504 plan meeting where they can really figure out and advocate in that area. We talk a lot about courtroom advocacy, but really some of the most important work these volunteers do are out of the courtroom. They'll be talking to the therapist. Most of these children come in with trauma, and it might just be emotional trauma because of the circumstances in which they've been living and the trauma of being removed from their home. as hard as an unstable home environment may be, it is only exacerbated when that child is removed. So they're talking to the therapist. How's Johnny doing in therapy? What are you seeing the next steps are? What kind of medication is he on? Is he doing well on those medications? All of that information gets reported back to the judge. They'll be talking to monitoring the parents. How's mom and dad doing maybe with parent aid services, and are they having stable income, and are they doing well on their jobs? And maybe they're most of the cases we deal with, parents have drug abuse issues, some sort of substance abuse issues. So they might be in therapy for that, or some sort of rehab, or inpatient rehab or outpatient rehab. So there's a lot to keep your fingers on because there's ups and downs. Mom and dad might be doing great in their rehab and then have a relapse. What did that look like? And did they recover from that? So they really are an investigative arm. And again, it's amazing that we take people who know nothing about the world they're stepping into. Judge Jackson, who is one of our juvenile court judges, talks about pulling back the curtain into a world that people step into and have no idea.
So the volunteers then get that, because I would imagine that they're just legally, the ability to be able to receive all that information about the children.
At the end of their 30 hours of training and 10 hours of courtroom observation, they are sworn in as an officer of the court.
Okay.
And so when they're presented with a new case, our team, we've got 8 members of our team, 5 of whom are our case managers. We call them advocacy specialists. They are in court for that very first hearing. They come back as a team and determine which of our volunteers might be suited for that case and the intricacies of that case. And at that point, they submit the volunteer's name to the court after speaking to the volunteer and assuming that they want to take that case on. We get a court order with that volunteer's name on it, with a whole list of things that they're entitled to know and see. So things that are typically HIPAA protected, they have access to.
Okay.
They can talk to people. We tell them a lot. They're fact gatherers. They're not fact sharers. The information they gather is only delivered to the judge in a courtroom setting and in a report. They provide a written report to the court that goes to all the parties, and they also provide verbal information in the courtroom setting.
So, Paula, we've got a couple minutes left. What does CASA need? Outside of more volunteers, because you have more children, then obviously, the balance of that across the state is lopsided. But besides more hands-on, and we will definitely want you to make an appeal for that. But then also, what else? What else is there? Because I imagine with the kids and they're coming out of quite terrible situations or traumatic situations, there's all kinds of things that the CASA volunteers could need, or even the organization could need to support the work that you're doing.
Sure. So as we've talked about, we are single mission focused. We have one mission, and that is to train these volunteers who become advocates. We are a nonprofit, a 501c3, and we raise money to support our efforts. We are lean. All of our money goes to recruiting, training, and supporting those volunteers. The way those volunteers who come knowing nothing are supported is by our staff. Our 5 case managers are with them every step of the way. We are able to staff our cases. Each of our case managers have caseloads between 25 and 27, so they can spend the time and attention to give this volunteer all they need to do the work that they do. So when they're in a courtroom, they've got somebody sitting next to them that helps them explain the nuances of the law that they might not understand. So as our case numbers grow, we typically have to add staff. We added a new staff member in August whose specialty is education. When a child moves homes, they lose about 6 months of their education. We needed somebody to help us better understand that and advocate for that. So really funding to provide the staff that we need to meet at that level. Our volunteers are also trained at a pretty high level. We bring in specialists in all fields, therapeutic specialists that can help them better understand what they're looking at and seeing. So funding is a big deal. But of course, as you've already mentioned, we really need volunteers, not only volunteers who are advocates, and people love our mission and say, I don't know if I could do that. That's heavy work, and it is heavy work. But we also need support in the office. So our advocacy specialists can stay focused on what they do best is to help those volunteers. So we need office help. We need people to photocopy and put things into Excel spreadsheets and help us track this and that and help us photocopy training binders and that.
So how do people find out?
Sure.
So real quickly, how do they find out and get to your website? If they have time, resources, or dollars to do it, how do they do it?
Locally in Forsyth County, you can reach us at forsythcountycasa.org. If you are in another county in the state, you can reach out to georgiacasa.org, and it lists all the 46 programs that are within the state of Georgia, and all of the programs need volunteers. We are fortunate that we are volunteered at this level where we can support 100% of the children in Forsyth County in foster care. That's not true across the state. So whatever, CASA as a whole is desperate for new volunteers.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure
and
to be here.
Thank you for the work that you're doing and all of the staff there at
Thank
CASA,
you.
Forsyth
Thank
County.
you. Thank you so much.
You're listening to The Good Work Show.